Welcome, everybody. My name is Anne-Laure Scheib. I'm a consultant in business creation and business takeover, working at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Montpellier. We are glad to have you with us this morning, talking about French and English business culture. And therefore, I warmly welcome Cathy or Cathy?
In French, Cathy.
Cathy. Cathy Guillaume. Welcome, Cathy. Oops. With Cathy, we are going to talk about French and English business culture, trying to understand the nuances. So, Cathy, just tell us who you are, please.
Hey, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this webinar today. I'm very grateful. So I'm the founder and the director of a consultancy company called EPM Consultancy. Our head offices are in the south of England, but we also have a satellite office here in the Montpellier area. I've got a team of European experts. We advise organizations on best route for funding coming from EU sources. We also manage international projects once the money is secured from different funding pots. And we are also evaluators of some of these European funding pots. We have a lot of experience in ERDF, European Regional Development Fund. So we assess the economic impact in particular of those projects. So I've got a lot of experience working across both cultures.
That's very interesting. So you really have experience working in England and in France.
Yeah, that's correct.
Let's see what is so different between our two countries. If I see it right here in France, people do work quite late at night. But how is it in England?
Yeah, very different indeed. So I actually graduated from French Grandes Écoles initially. So my career started in France.
Okay.
I'm a chartered chemical engineer by background. And I started working on R&D projects in large pharmaceutical groups in the southeast of France. And then I moved to the UK to do my MBA, so Master in Business Administration. And I arrived in Brighton, which is a lovely city for those of you who may have not discovered it. It's in the south of England by the sea, an hour south of London. So
Brighton is very, very nice. I really liked it.
Very international.
Good place to go.
Indeed. A lot of pubs to go out at night. So I discovered the local culture by joining a business link then, which is the equivalent of a chamber of commerce actually in France. So, and I was hired to help with cooperation between the southeast of England and northern France then. So in my first week, as you can imagine, it was all discovery, really, really exciting. And I kind of was doing the same as I was doing in France before as a cadre, so part of the management. You're expected in France to work late at night. You know, I was
to be the first one and the last one. Okay.
Exactly. You know, I was never back home, you know, before 7 p.m. And that's kind of normal and expected from the cadre in France. So I was doing the same the first couple of days in England. And I could see that my English colleagues were a little bit intrigued by me, but they were hesitant saying anything. And then reaching the end of the week, so on Friday, a few of them came to me and said, "Hey, Cathy, you know, is this time to go to the pub? You know, this is 5 p.m., you know, on Friday, come on, you know." So I've soon realized that the working pattern is very different between France and England. In England, you know, you start at 9 a.m. in the morning and we finish at 5:30. We have a short lunch break. Often you have a sandwich, you know, that you have on your desk, or you go out, you know, around really the office to have a little stroll. Whereas in France, you're expected to start earlier and finish later, but the lunch break is longer, you know, between 12 and 2.
We'll talk about lunch a bit later.
Indeed.
So you have to go, you have to finish early in the afternoon.
Yeah, early. And And also, it's not seen positively if you actually work late, because I think it means in the culture that you're not good enough to actually do the job that you're being given.
You're not organized.
Yeah, not organized enough. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So just don't do it.
Okay. This is already a very big difference between our two countries. So the next point we wanted to talk about is team building, participating management. How does it go in England? And who will organize these team buildings? Did you knew that before when you were working in France? What did you discover and how do you do then?
Yeah. So I was only working for 2 weeks really in England, but I was invited to my first team building. That was so exciting because in France, you know, I've been working in R&D for a few years before and I never came across a team building. So I was really excited. We were all booked in a 4-star hotel on the seafront in Brighton. And the agenda was very well structured. Mm-hmm. Clearly, we could see that the boss wasn't in charge of everything, quite the opposite. A lot of the actions on the agenda were actually led by colleagues. So a very flat organogram, if you compare British organogram with French organogram, in France is far more hierarchical than it is in England on the other side. Mm-hmm. And our director then, you know, was very happy to be challenged by his member of staff, you know, even newcomers or even secretaries, you know, really it was very much encouraged to actually
so they're more or less at the same level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mm-hmm. No hierarchical kind of extension really when you contribute to a discussion. Okay. That's very different from the French culture where you tend to have more senior member of staff, you know, contributing to some of these discussions. So a very cooperative approach in England compared to France. And the team building were organized in small working groups. Mm-hmm. So this is also a very good way to have the buy-in of your team and your colleagues when you organize a team building. So I'll give you an example. Remember that, you know, I was working for the equivalent of a chamber of commerce then. So, you know, one of the questions we were asked is how can we attract new businesses, you know, and offer our services then. So we were asked to work with 1 or 2 colleagues at a time. We had 15 minutes to come up with suggestions. And at the end, one of us will actually feed back to the group. So it means like in less than 40 minutes, we had a beginnable action plan done. Fantastic.
Very efficient.
Extremely efficient. Your business plan was done. Fantastic.
That's great. And you would say in France it doesn't work like that.
What I was impressed by as well was that you always have topics for newcomers in those team building. So in this particular example, there were one session about the economic situation of the county. As you know, in England, we don't have departments, but we do have counties, which is kind of a similar administrative structure. So we were asked, you know, what do you know about the latest foreign investment coming to the county? What are the growing sectors and so on? And same thing, same principle. So new groups, so you break in smaller groups again. So it means the newcomers could actually learn and listen to the knowledge of the older member of staff. And again, in half an hour, you had your knowledge brushed up, you know, on the economic situation of the county. So this is also good to make sure that your younger member of team are kind of part of the organization, mm-hmm. And feel that they are contributing also to the growth of the organization.
And then you have a quicker integration to the group from exactly. The new people comers. Yeah. So far away from that. This is not a real French culture. In fact, I didn't see it until now. But every country is very different, and we are here to talk about the differences between England and France. now let's see the next point. We will talk about it. People say time is money. I would say that's right. One thing which is quite important question is what's about being punctual? Does British colleagues and partners would accept to be late? I do ask the question because here in France, people are never in time. Oh, nearly never. Oh, excuse me for all the French people who are listening, but it's true. The French people are rarely in time. Very often they will start meetings 15, 20 minutes later than they had to. So would the English accept this or not? How does it go up there?
So this is a very, very big difference between the two business cultures. And really, if you want to trade with England, or if English people want to trade with France, you really need to be aware of this, because otherwise you're going to make a faux pas. So in England, you will find that meetings can start even early than the scheduled time. If everyone is there, then the meeting will actually start. Why wait?
Okay, you say we have a meeting at 9, when everybody is here at 8:30, you start.
Exactly. If everyone is there like 5 minutes earlier, the meeting.
Not wasting time. That's great.
Not wasting time. And to be honest, I've worked for the past 20 years now with British colleagues. And I don't think I've come across a meeting that started later than 5 minutes late in 20 years of business practice.
Coming to France in one day, you will have already 50 minutes late.
As we know, the French culture also is very different between the regions. In some French regions, it would be only 5 minutes, but in other regions, it might be actually half an hour. So this is a tip also for British colleagues who are listening to us now. If you come to France, you want to do business in France, you have to be prepared for starting your meetings late. You mustn't get offended. This is nothing against you. This is just the normal way of doing meetings. And also you have to be prepared of your meeting running late. So it means don't plan for back-to-back meetings because you might be late to the next one. So it's very important when you have Franco-British discussion to be aware of this difference of time, because you can ruin actually a cooperation without even knowing it if you turn up 20 minutes late to a meeting organized by your British colleagues.
And when you have a meeting in England, how are those meetings organized?
Again, very different. In England, the organizer of the meeting will prepare an agenda. So it means we know when the meeting starts, and we start on time. We know when the meeting ends.
Okay.
In the agenda, you will find a very detailed kind of bullet points explaining, what we are going to talk about. So typically we will have a round of introduction of people, 5 minutes. You put a time as well allocated to each task. You might have a presentation about John Smith's, about Project X, 20 minutes, then followed by 10 minutes discussion, Q&A session, and then you will have the AOB at the end. And the chair of the meeting in England, so usually the person who is the organizer of it, will actually make sure that we move smoothly from one item to the next. The person will reformulate, the actions that have been taken, from each of the topics, and make sure that we have a conclusion at the end. So it means the British meetings are a place where we make decisions, as opposed to in France. I think meetings are much more an opportunity to exchange ideas, very important also as well, but not necessarily making a decision at that meeting. And that's something very important for my British colleagues who are listening here, is that if you want to do a deal with French counterparts, you often need to follow up on your meetings, because they will have to go back in their organization and probably check with their hierarchy if their directors, managers are happy with the discussion that took place in the meeting. as opposed to you having a decision here and then. So very different. So when I run Franco-British meetings now, because I do a lot of this with some of my international projects, I found a halfway in between. So I've got a much more structured agenda, you know, with my Franco-British meetings, but I do follow up with my French colleagues before and after the meetings to make sure that there are some common decisions that are going to be made at the end of it. So that would be my tip.
Yes, in France, people, but the French do like talk, do like to talk. They are talking a lot. The decisions very often taken quite a while afterwards, as you said. Different once again. You just have to know it, because when you have a meeting and you do want to have a decision, you have to
wait
to know it. Yes. So that's the French exception. So let's talk about going dressed. Do you really think that there is a dress code, especially French, especially English? Do you think there is a dress code special for every country?
I think again, there is some subtle nuances, I think, between France and England. First of all, everywhere you go, I think you need to make sure that you dress in the same way as your colleagues are, you know, for dressing up for your industry or your sector of expertise. But in England, there is a particularity, which is dress down Fridays. So it means a lot of organizations on a Friday at the end of the week will accept that their member of staff are a little bit less formal and a bit more casual. During the team building as well, that we mentioned earlier on, often you will be asked to be dressed in smart casual, so it means a bit more relaxed. In France, we don't have this distinction depending on the day.
But it makes the life much easier. When you say you have to be dressed like that, you know what you have to wear. If you don't have any idea, you don't have anything to wear. It makes life complicated, I think.
Yeah, I think something else that we have to be aware when dealing with England is that from a very young age, British kids are used to wear a uniform.
Yeah.
Because when you go to a British school, each school has got a specific uniform with their specific colors and so on. So I think British colleagues are used to be identified as part of a group, whereas we really don't have the equivalent in the French culture. And I think as they grow up, obviously, I think my British colleagues have much more of a sense of belonging to a group. And we don't necessarily have that in France. I think we may have more about the region, belonging to a region in France that you won't have in England. But yes, belonging to a group or to a company or to a school is quite important.
So it's you know, more or less, if you are dressed like that, or if I am dressed like that, you do belong to this category of people. Is it that?
It will depend on the sector. Like when I was working for the regional authority for a while in England, we even had a dress code as part of the documents that you were meant to read and go by. So it has relaxed a bit now, especially because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of people now are working remotely from their home. This has actually become the norm in England. So it means the dress code has relaxed because you only see people from to here. So it has changed a lot, the etiquette. And now it is also the norm, as I said. So if you want to hire English staff, you know, don't be afraid to put 100% working remotely because they're really used to it. And that's even seen as a competitive advantage in certain sectors.
Okay. So we've gone, let's talk, Martin, now about team management.
Yes.
Team management is a big subject, huh?
It is and we need to make sure we do that, well, to deliver what we are commissioned to do. So first of all, the makeup of the teams are very different in French culture, in an English culture, or Anglo-Saxon culture, I would say. In England, and I was surprised to see that again in my first job across all my career in England, including my own team now, I operate like that. It's very common to have a mix of consultants and some direct employees. And those consultants are actually experts in their field. Usually you pay them a little more than your employees, but they are experts in their teams, in their field. And also they often work for other organizations, not only yours. So it means that they bring a certain openness to the organization because they have their own networks, their own contacts. They provide the intelligence actually to the company. And also very flexible because they will come 2 or 3 days a week in the office often. They have their own desk and they are really part of your overall team. There is really not much distinction between your consultants and your member of staff. That's very different. The ratio from what I've seen across my career in England is roughly 1/3 of consultants for 2/3 of your direct employees. And that ratio actually evolves depending on the economic situation of the country. And as we know, we have been through a lot the last 3 years everywhere.
Yes, the last 3 years were very hard years. 1/3 for the consultants. That's interesting. I wouldn't have said that so much. It's quite important.
It's quite hard.
But at the other side, as you say, it's a real expert in his job. So a real expert. If you want to have him in your team every day, you have to pay him, and it's getting too expensive for most of the companies.
Exactly.
So that's a good idea.
We share those across several organizations.
That's a good idea, and which is very interesting to see as well. As you said, that he is very open. He gets a lot of information he wouldn't get if he's only in your companies. That's very interesting as well. That's another way to work. So our 2 countries have to look at from the one to the other and pick up the best thing.
That's practice. Something else I wanted to add also, if you want to recruit an English member of staff, you will see a lot of differences in the CVs, because in France we tend to have kind of high education, very linear career, whereas in the UK, the recruitment agencies are looking for skills as opposed to knowledge or diploma, and changing careers, sectors, going away for a year abroad is quite encouraged even when you first graduate in England. So in my own team, and a lot of teams I've been part of in England, we have very diverse profiles that you need to manage. In France, the teams are much more homogeneous. I think it brings its challenges, of course, but if you are very good at project management, I think the outcome is much better because of the diversity that you have in your team.
Yes, everyone brings his own knowledge, and the other one can learn from this, and different horizons and different educations. This is very, very interesting, I think, but you rarely find this in France. Another difference. So we have been talking already about a lot of different things going on between France and England. Do you have the other day we were talking about it, writing up the phone numbers. In France, you write up the phone numbers 2 by 2 by 2. In England,
3.
3.
Four numbers and then 3 and 3. Yes.
That's funny. Let's go and talk about your company image. It is when you start your business, when you created your business, you think about the right image of your company. You want to have super logo. You want to have a very good visual, which will distinguish you from the others. So it's something which is very important for you, and which reflects you and your company. The question is, can I use the same visual and the same logo as well in France as well in England, or do you have to take care about something?
Yeah, again, the branding, the coloring, the messaging that you will be using to promote your company services in England, or vice versa, your services for a UK company coming to France are very different.
Oh.
Very different again.
Well, I'm not very surprised.
I came across this for my own consultancy business, actually, when we were preparing a brochure that we wanted to use on both markets. So first tip for me, again, on this, don't use a British designer to design your logo to sell in France, because that won't work. And the opposite is a disaster as well. So you need someone who really understands the design and the etiquette and the culture to design your branding for your company in that particular country. In England, we tend to be much more looking for facts and figures. We are not shy about money at all. And we use humor as well in messaging, much more than in France. Like for my company, for example, it will be something like our strip line. We have helped manage 20 million of European funding last year. Our success rate is 95%, down to the fact. Whereas in France, we're a bit more shy about money, and the graphic design tend to be a bit more stylish, elegant. Another difference also, which I've come across in the last video that we did just a few months ago, because I've got a journalist working in my team, she's British, is that she really wanted to know a lot about me as the entrepreneur behind the company. She wanted to know my motivations and all the rest of it. I said, whoa, no, for France, I don't need that. For England, she really wanted to understand who I am, really. Whereas in France, it's much more of a corporate, really, type of video that we have prepared, which is better for the market.
So you really have to work about the branding, special England, special France,
very much so.
Maybe special China. That's not maybe. That's for sure. You have to avoid a couple of colors and words. Would you say it's easier, more fun, the English or the French?
No, I have to say it was difficult for me to actually to open, I guess, the door to my personality as an entrepreneur, being French born. It was quite an experience. But I knew that's what the market wanted in England, so we had to be much more on social media and so on. Whereas in France, it's much more corporate. I think our private life in France is really distinctive from our business life. There is not so much tension in the British culture. But as I said, let's get guided by your graphic designer in that particular country. They will know and they will do a great job for you. Just be open to the differences.
Don't take a French graphic designer to work on clients in England. No. But the English, when they want to work with the French market, then get a French designer. There's no problem. Okay, then. What would you say is something really, really shocking for you? Is very, very different between France and England? What was very, what do you say? What's that?
I guess the attitude and relationships towards gastronomy. And I'm going to make you smile here because this is, I guess, a big difference I've seen when I first landed and arrived in England. I was a newcomer, just joined a company. And usually when you hire a new person in France, your boss, your line manager, sometimes even several levels up of hierarchy, will take you out for a nice lunch. And that means like 3-course meal usually by French standards. You have a really nice lunch on your first day. So, you know, again, in my first week in England, I was quite excited because I was promised I would be taken to the pub for lunchtime with my line manager.
Great, you will have to something nice to eat.
Yes.
Yummy, yummy, yummy.
Exactly, as you do. And I was quite surprised when actually I was just offered a sandwich, but it was a sandwich with a French baguette as opposed to like a club sandwich that they normally have, you know, on the corner of a desk at lunchtime. So it was better than usual, you know, by British standard. But for me, it was kind of a big difference.
Deception.
Deception, I have to say. And then in France, and that's something that every British business is listening to us today need really to be aware of, because there is no equivalent in the British culture. Lunchtime are important in the French culture. Gastronomy is very important. And there is a lot of deals, negotiations that would happen over lunchtime. So you have to be prepared to take your English, your French prospect clients, suppliers, member of your team. You need to make sure that you feed them well, and don't be afraid to take them out for lunch. This is not a waste of time, because that's how it will be perceived, I think, in England. Oh, why spend 2 hours? You know, there. But this is part of the business etiquette. Lunchtime are very important and also very enjoyable.
Don't take them out for a sandwich. Huh?
No. That would be it.
Even club sandwich. No, it's no go. You have to invite them for a business meal, a real meal. No, not only a sandwich and a little bit of salad. No, it's real meal. Another one, the French exception. You have to eat, and while you are eating, you make deals. Exactly. You make big deals sometimes. It's also fun. As an English, you will discover the French gastronomy. Just take care to do some sport afterwards. But it's absolutely important for the French culture. Just a question: are there any people who have questions? We could answer them. Sure. I'm just looking now. Hold on, I'm not very. I can see it. Just hold on. The first question, what if you have an international company that deals with both UK and France? How would you address logo and design? Yes, this is a real complicated question.
I will adapt, I think, my design, as I said, to that particular market. I think the first thing you need to do is just show the design that you have, for example, for the British market to a French designer. Wait for the eyes, or, you know, for the feedback, and you will know straight away if that is suitable to the French market or not. And clearly, if not, you need to think about adapting your branding, your message to the French culture.
Okay, and you think that I can use one and make it a bit softer, just changing colors? You think that would be possible? Because it's a question of money as well. Huh?
It is, and we know that, you know, marketing budget can be quite high, especially if you are selling products, you know, behind it, because you need to change all your packaging. That costs money. So sometimes you can get away perhaps with just some minor changes. As I said, you know, some of the messages might be slightly different. Some of the coloring might be slightly different. And if that's just that, then that's good. But get your branding checked by your French native.
Do we have any other questions? I know there are a lot of difference. We've not been talking until now. our two countries are so different. The way to work, to live, the culture is very, very, very different. So that's for sure. But it's not impossible to work together. So you have to take care about all those specificities. It's possible. Just to know that they are different. I've got another question. Is there a difference between how many times one would contact the prospect before closing?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I guess this will depend on the sector of the industry as well that this company is working in.
What's your sector of activity? If you could please precise it, would be nice.
Generally in England, we use mailing much more than phoning. That's a big difference as well.
Oh, you don't call the prospect?
Not necessary. Okay. You know, I receive a lot of direct mailing from prospects, so that's something to be aware of. And in France, I think there is much more personal relationship, face-to-face, even engagement that you need to be planning for. Going back to my lunches, you know, there is a much longer, I think, period of courting your potential prospect, even trying to have kind of references from other organizations in the batch that will say, oh, well, let's talk to them because I know they are good, you know. So try to get some people on board trying to help you to approach your prospect. And don't hesitate to have a much more personalized approach to your prospect in France as well.
The person who asked the question is working in high tech.
High tech, okay. Yeah, I mean, also, as we know, sometimes you may want to respond to open tenders. This is what I do with my business. You know, everything is done through a competitive open tendering process. But again, as soon as you get good references, people will start contacting you directly. Yeah. And word of mouth is very important in both countries, but I would say even more so in France.
I agree. So, any questions? It's common in Asia that prospects will say yes without meaning they are going to sign a contract. Are there subtleties to know about when selling? That's right. In Asia, people never say no. They always say yes. We have to be sure that's really there is a yes. Would you say it's like that in France or in England?
No, I think French people tend to say no more than in England, you know. But in England, they will say but, you know, so they might say here it is, but, so you have to wait for the but because that will be the conditions to the contract. But once you have formalized deal, you know, and that's it, that's the deal.
In Asia, it's not like that, but because even if you have formalized the deal, you are not really sure that's going. Thank you for your question. This is a good, interesting question. I was very glad to have you with us this morning. I hope that now you know much better the difference between the cultural difference between France and England. Thank you so much, Cathy, for coming today. I only can say now, see you tomorrow for our next webinar. And tomorrow we will talk about insurance, but not only. So have a nice day, and thank you for coming and being with us this morning. Thank you very much, Cathy.
Sure.
And goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Au revoir.
Oui, au revoir.